Alright, this is going to be my first and only take on this. So I'm not going to go back and redo this. I don't even know if I'm going to put this on Steven the Rainmaker or Steven the Rantmaker. But I just know I'm going to record this and just see where it goes. This is my Michael Blaine video. Okay, so I'm obviously going to be working on a story about this. This is just the abridged version. I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. With that being said, let's skip the foreplay and go straight into it. Michael Joseph Blaine, a.k.a. my father, was born on April 16th of 1963 on the south side of Columbus, Ohio. At some point in the early 80s, between 81, 82-ish, he met my mother, Teresa Renee Hill, who was born October 14th, 1967. There was about a 4-year age gap between them. She was definitely not even old enough to drive yet, and he had barely graduated high school himself, and he decided to interlope with this teenager, and in 1983, they had a child together by the name of Michael Joseph Blaine II, a.k.a. my older brother, Joey. And unfortunately for my mother, she had to drop out of high school, which is very unfortunate, but, you know, can't really be going to school and taking care of a kid at the same time, you know? That's not even the worst of it. Both of my parents were very incompetent people. My mom was not mature enough to be having any children, but there she was, and that's just the story, the cards that have been dealt for her. She drew the short straw in life, and, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, teenage pregnancies always end bad, you know, because obviously there's quite a bit of people out there who have had children at a very young age, and they flourish in life, and they've done pretty well. Unfortunately, that was not the case for my mother. As I said before, she was forced to drop out of high school and live a mediocre life of just being a house mom. She bounced from job to job for a little bit in her 20s and 30s, but for the most part, that's just all she was. She was a housemaid, a house mom. She was just kept in the house all the time. And it gets worse from here. Don't worry. I promise. It gets fucking worse. So, my father, as I said in a TikTok, before he was even an adult, he was a juvenile delinquent. He was constantly getting in trouble with the law, constantly just, you know, being a fucking menace to his society. And then, at one point, now he became an adult, and now he's going to start facing serious repercussions for his actions. Well, with that being said, my father also was not a very good boyfriend and father figure, because that's at the point where he started committing domestic violence against my mom, because my father had a severe temper on him. He was a complete and utter sociopath, and he enjoyed hurting my mom. And anytime my mom ever, quote, stepped out of line or anything of that nature, he put her in her place, and he would commence to being violent with her, pulling her hair, slapping her, punching her, squeezing her, pinching her, getting in her face, biting her. My dad did everything and anything to terrorize her. If he couldn't get to her physically, he was definitely an emotionally abusive human being. He would call her names, make fun of her flaws and insecurities, and then he weaponized any insult that he could. My mom was was a daddy's girl, and my dad knew that and was extremely jealous of her father, because my mom was showing her father more love than him at times, and this angered my dad. So my dad hated my grandfather, Grandpa Ernest, who, to me, in my eyes, was a very sweet and humble human being, and everybody liked him, and he was a good man. But in the eyes of my father, Grandpa was a piece of shit, you know, worthless alcoholic, you know, and it's like, well, I mean, you're a fucking drug addict. I mean, who are you to sit there and judge my grandpa for drinking when you smoke pot and you do coke and, you know, you're not exactly a fucking amazing model citizen yourself. But anyways, my dad lived in a glass house and he liked to throw stones. Oh yeah, did I mention that he used to hit my mother, and he was a frequent woman beater, and then he was also very bad with my older brother Joey and my older sister Megan. Later on, it would be me. But for the most part, those two were his targets, and it just seemed like my siblings could do no right. Like, everything that they did, it was punishable. My dad was not very well in tune with his emotions, and to the best of my memory, I know this happened probably before I was born, but when my older brother had a headache, he was not able to swallow some kind of headache medicine. I think it was like an aspirin, and because he wasn't able to swallow it, my dad went into a blind fury and apparently put his hands on Joey. And I guess he would do things like make Joey go walk down the street to get pizza for the family. If I remember correctly, Joey was not even 10 years old when this would go on. And I guess he's blackened Joey's eye before. I mean, I've seen him blacken Joey's eye when Joey was older, but I guess he also used to do this back when Joey was in grade school. And from what I remember, he was very rough with Joey. He was constantly on Joey's ass for the most minute things. Any little trivial thing, And I saw as I got older, my dad was just a despicable human being. And that's just how he was with Joey. Joey could not do right with my father. And Joey had to walk on eggshells. And even then, it didn't matter because my dad just would find a reason to fucking yell at him. But then again, he was also the same way with my mother. So anyways, I remember at one point after Dallas was born, and I think my mom was either pregnant with Jacob or Jacob was a newborn. Or maybe it was right before Jacob was born. But we were living on Kimberly Park, or not Kimberly Parkway, but we were living on Yearling Road. And the domestic violence was so bad, the neighbors ended up calling the cops on my dad and was reporting that, he was beating the shit out of my mom because she was screaming so loudly. And being in an apartment complex, you never really could tell who was doing the calling. Well, anyways, so the cops eventually showed up, and I remember my dad was being hauled off and no shirt on, wearing only one shoe, and he was hobbling out to the car. And then me and my family, Joey, Megan, and Dallas, and possibly Jacob, we were all forced to stay with Carmen and her son Steven. And it was nice, and I enjoyed being there and everything. But I just wanted to be home. But at the same time, I didn't want to be home. And I just wanted this to be like a new norm and be away from my dad forever. Because I, at a very young age, was scared of my dad. That's something else. So my dad says in a story that the reason that I resented him so much was because when I was very little, I guess my nickname was Kickback. Because when my dad would go to watch football, I'd walk up to him and kick back in his chair with him on the Lazy Boy, and we would watch football together. He said, and this is what my gaslighting piece of shit dad said, "Oh, I was working out of town for a while, and when I came back, he just never wanted to hold me again and love me again." Okay, that's bullshit, okay? Maybe that is true that he left town for a while and whatever, and maybe I just didn't want to, I didn't recognize him, but come on, I know how kids are. I dated a girl back about 10 years ago, and her kid and I hadn't seen each other in a while, because her kid was in love with me. But it had been a while since Addison, which is her daughter, had seen me. And at first she didn't want to, come to me because she didn't recognize me. But after not even just half a day, once she recognized that I had a jacket that she recognized, she remembered me, and then everything went back to normal. So I don't want to hear that bullshit. What it was is, yeah, I was daddy's little kickback and everything. But I think when I started to realize that my father was a complete piece of shit and a garbage human being, I avoided him. Because every time my dad would come home from work, it was always just screaming and yelling and breaking shit and fucking just being a complete and utter goddamn menace. And I didn't want that. I didn't want any part of that. I wanted him to just leave me the fuck alone, stop hitting my mom, stop hitting Joey, stop hitting Megan. I just wanted it to stop. Well, anyways, fast forward some time, and now we talk about Sergeant Price. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here with a straight face and say that my mom was innocent. My mom definitely did a lot of questionable shit growing up, and I could see why my dad got furious with her. Now, I am not justifying domestic violence. I'm really not. As a matter of fact, I am 100% saying domestic violence is not okay. But I understand why my dad got frustrated and why, because my mom constantly was doing shit behind his back to piss him off. And lead an example, my dad did not want my Aunt Tina to constantly come over when he wasn't there to sell my mother pills. My mom, as I said, was no saint. She had a condition, my cousin Megan has this, where it's a condition where she plucks individual hairs out of the top of her head and it leaves bald spots. Well, my mom was prescribed medication for it very early on in her life, and my dad hated when she used to pick at her head. But the problem is my mom needed her medication to prevent from doing that, and my dad stressed her the fuck out, and that was just her outlet to fucking stop doing that. So she was damned if she did and damned if she didn't. But anyways, but yeah, constantly having Tina over and then having us kids lie about it. This will come back up later, but there was a point, if memory serves me best, it started around 1998, and my dad found out, I think somewhere around 99 to 2000, that my mother was, I don't know if this is actually true or not, but apparently my mom had mail company. And again, I'm not going to sit here and paint her as this fucking saint that could do no wrong just because she's my mom. If my mom is fucked up, she's fucked up. But allegedly, and again allegedly, my mom had a cop over, and I guess he was just a friend. Now, according to my brother Jacob, who was basically a baby at this time, my dad had asked Jacob, hey, when the cop came over, what did mommy do? He said that mommy told him to go to the room. And Jacob to this day doesn't remember this, because obviously he's blocked it out, plus he was so young. But it was never confirmed that my mom was ever alone with this guy in the bedroom. So, but I guess my mom kind of low-key had a boyfriend. And I don't know if this is true or not. Like I said, I'm not trying to sit here and defend my mom's actions, because if you're a cheater, you're a cheater. But to the best of my knowledge, I know my mother had taken a polygraph test. My dad went out and spent a couple $100. I don't remember how much exactly, but I think he said it was about $200. And they went and to the Mifflin Township Police Department, and they had my mother take a polygraph test. And allegedly it came up that my mom did not sleep with the cop. But regardless, the cop that she was talking to, which was Sergeant Price, he did get in trouble. I don't know if he got demoted or fired or whatever, but my mom suffered for it though. My dad made her life a living hell for the remainder of their lives. And obviously, he did not need the excuse for Sergeant Price to treat her like shit, because he was going to treat her like shit regardless. Now, here's what burns my ass. Obviously, I wash my hands on my mom with that, her doing that, because she should not have been doing that. She violated the sanctity of their marriage. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Oh, my dad fucked around on my mom. That's right. Yeah, so my dad had apparently fucked my Aunt Kim. And allegedly he fucked Aunt Heather. I don't know if that's true, and like I said, I'm not trying to bury anybody. But I know for a fact it was confirmed my dad fucked my Aunt Kim, which, by the way, is my mom's sister. And I guess this was when my mom was giving birth to my brother Jacob at the time. And so, again, my dad, this is a theme with my father. He was a giant hypocrite. Like, he used to get on my mom about being on drugs, but then later in life, he started doing drugs. And then suddenly it was all fine and hunky-dory. Oh, he's allowed to do it. But when she does it, oh no, I'm going to beat the dog shit out of you and terrorize you over it. Well, anyways, because of this affair, air quotes, that my mom had with this police officer, apparently this was enough for him to terrorize her. Oftentimes, periodically, for the next, almost 20 years, he would tap her phone calls. He would hide cameras, in obscure places, behind the fish tank or something. And he would do this when, right before he would go to work. And then he would have it filmed for however long. But yeah, my mom was constantly surveyed by this motherfucker. Breaking her fucking, her privacy, monitoring everything that she did. And then my dad never let my mom go out the house because of that. And the domestic violence between my mom and my dad got so bad, it got to the point where the police got involved again. And in 2000, right before my 12th birthday, my dad was arrested again because not only was he putting his hands on my mother, but he also attacked my sister and caused her finger to bleed because he bit her right on the finger and tore skin off of her finger. And then cops were called. He went to jail for a while. And then I had a very awkward 12th birthday, and this will come up again later. So we were forced to move out of the neighborhood that we were living in at the time, which was Woodland Avenue, which wasn't the best area, but at the time, I was making friends, and I was very happy, but my dad didn't care. He had to move out of there because he wanted to get away from the north side, and he wanted to live, somewhere else. Plus, he was a dog shit human being when it came to taking care of his bills, and eventually that would lead on to a lot of us kids, not wanting to take care of our responsibilities in life and just blowing it off or whatever, and then, like I said, that is something Michael Blaine instilled in every last one of us. Some of us handled it a little bit better than others, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, so when we moved from Woodland to Harbor, the domestic violence didn't stop. It didn't even fucking slow down. But my dad still terrorized my mom, fucking always asking questions about the cop and doing the fucking wiretapping and the fucking hidden cameras. Just making my mom's life a living hell. Well, then Joey ended up moving to Arizona, and my sister was constantly in and out of the house, living with whoever, and then, constantly, doing what she was doing because of the trauma she suffered in the hands of this cocksucker. Then there was me. I was left alone with my dad and my mom and constantly getting in the middle of their fights, and I was not about to let this piece of shit fucking put his hands on my mother anymore. So I became my mom's savior. Well, unfortunately, I was at the whatever the word I'm looking, the butt of the fucking abuse from my dad, excuse me. And that became a thing with me and my father. And then I noticed he started treating me a lot different. He was a lot stricter on me. He was constantly on my ass about things, and I could tell, once I started to hit puberty, he was harder on me. I got taller, my voice got deeper, I put on a significant amount of weight, so my dad saw me as a threat to him, for some fucking reason. That's something else that should be noted. My dad was not a very big man. He was about 5'8", and he weighed 100, maybe 130, 150, somewhere in that little ballpark, but yeah, I was about his height, maybe an inch shorter, and I weighed a whopping 230 pounds by the time I was a teenager. By the time I was between 13 to 17 years old, I basically weighed as much as a light heavyweight pro wrestler. and my dad weighed like a fucking as much as a child. And my dad saw me as a threat. Plus the fact that, like, you know, I would get involved between him and my mother having their little domestic disputes, and he took that as a sign that I am on Team Teresa rather than Team Michael, which is not necessarily true. I was on Team fucking knock it off. But anyways, I noticed, like, his demeanor towards me changed a lot. He started treating me differently, and he would constantly fucking call me demeaning names, call me fat, call me retarded, and just did whatever he could to torment me, because he knew that, like, you know, he weaponized my fucking trauma and made it, you know, something like a target for him to, you know, bully and control and then, you know, intimidate me and all that. Well, then there came a point a couple years later where I'm 19 years old, and it was Christmas Eve of 2007, or the morning of Christmas Eve 2007, and I was sleeping on the couch. I'm 19 years old, and my dad was screaming at my mom because my mom had left somewhere with my sister, and they went and did something. I don't know what the fuck, but it ended up getting to the point where my dad's, like, screaming in my mom's face, and he punched her right in the mouth. So as soon as that happened, I jumped up and I was like, yo, we're not about to do this. I fucking saw you hit her. And then, you know, an exchange happened. He said, basically, he's like, I'm not going to hit you because I know your fat ass is going to call the police like a little pussy. So then I told my siblings in the house, like, whoever was around, I said, hey, he puts his hands on me, don't call the cops. And then I looked over at my other siblings, I said, he puts his hands on me, do not call the cops. That's when I started to challenge him. I'm like, what now, motherfucker? Like, you got nothing. There was an exchange that happened. He ended up poking me in my face with his finger, and I ended up pushing him. He had a PS2 in his hand because one of his favorite things to do was disconnect all the video games, because he knew that we all like to play video games. So when I got up, started screaming at him, he started disconnecting all the video games because he knew that that was something we cared about. I didn't care. I just was worried about punking this motherfucker. So then I pushed him, and he had the PS2 in his hands. He goes, okay. He puts the PS2 down. He walks over to me, and he fucking punches me right in my lip. And he's screaming at me, saying shit like, all right, motherfucker, you think you want to be big now? And he started to say something else. I wasn't going to let him fucking talk anymore. So I body slammed him. And I got on top of him, and I asserted my dominance. And after a minute of me being on him, you know, letting him know, like, I'm going to fucking kill you, he started crying like a little bitch. And he was like, you hurt me. He was crying and complaining that I hurt him. And then, you know, he ended up leaving the house because he had to go to work or whatever. Well, anyways, then fast forward to March of 2008, I woke up again to the sounds of my mom screaming, because my mom was using the restroom, and I guess she woke up in a not amazing mood, and my dad took that personal because, of course, because he's fucking Michael Blaine. And so he's like yelling at her, and then finally he just started roughing her up, not knowing that I just woke up and I'm ready to beat the dog shit out of him. So I start roughing him up. There was an exchange that happened, and then at some point we ended up breaking it off. But my dad couldn't leave well enough alone, and he wanted to keep going because, of course, he had to win the fight. So then he started yelling at me, talking shit, saying he wants me to move out, and nobody wants me here. I'm a fucking fat fuck, and this, that, and the other. So then I told him off, and I called him my names or whatever. He got back up in my face and did that finger poking shit again. So then I fucking body slammed him. And after I body slammed him, I backed up and I was like, yo, I was like, what's up? Like, we're gonna fucking stop this. My mom tried to pick him up and is like holding him, and she's like, Michael, don't hit him, don't hit him. And he goes, oh, I'm not gonna hit him. And he fucking reached around my mother and sucker punched me right in the face. Broke my fucking nose. That was it. So I fucking pounced on my dad, and I blacked out for a minute, and the only thing I remember is after he hit me, I fucking grabbed him, body slammed him to the couch, and I proceeded to just wail on his face. Then, I had long hair back then, so he grabbed me by my hair, and he was trying to bite my ear off. He was trying to bite me in the face, trying to bite my ear off, and I just was not allowing it. And then I started beating the dog shit out of him. And I was pummeling his face in. And then he starts screaming and crying like a little girl. And he gets up and he's hobbling. And he's like, "Oh, you hurt me. I hate everybody here." Like, just crying like a little fucking pathetic pussy. And it's like, dude, you picked a fight with... First of all, you tried to fight me when I was, like, not even fully awake. Like, you'd been awake a while, motherfucker. That just shows you what kind of a bitch you are. Well, anyways, fast forward like a year. Things are still bad between me and my father. I already graduated high school at this point. But then, you know, he was constantly getting on my ass about everything and wanting me to get a job and whatever. And at that time, the economy sucked dick and I couldn't find a decent job. Plus, he never helped me look for a job. He was never a good father to me. He never wanted to help me. So it just became a thing where I just was not able to find work because he never helped me out. Well, I always tell this story about how he kicked me out and I went homeless. So it's about late May of 2009. I'm getting ready to turn 21 years old. And one day I was recording an episode of WWE ECW. And the reason I was recording it was because my friends Jimmy, Ariel, and I believe Nick was there. And their signs were very visible in the background. And I wanted to record it to show everybody that my homies were there at that show. And here's the thing. My dad knew the wrestling schedule because at this point, I had been a wrestling fan for well over 10 years. My dad knew. He knew what days of the week were unavailable for me to do anything for him. So my brother came in my bedroom when I was recording wrestling, and he's like half asleep. He's like, "Steven, Dad said go to the store." And I was like, "Can he have somebody else do it?" Tell him I said no, I'm recording an episode of wrestling. So then Jacob leaves. It's not even like 20 seconds later, my fucking dad kicks the door in, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs like, "Motherfucker, I said for you to go to the store, blah, blah, blah," and he's like yelling at me and shit. And then he's like, "You better fucking get your ass to the store." And I'm like, "Or else what?" And then he was just like, "If you're not out of my house, I'm calling the cops and you will be thrown in jail." And of course, I didn't know better. So he straight up like was acting like he was going to call the police on me. Because I know what kind of a pussy my dad is. And he would have called the cops too. Here's the thing. I was not aware of my rights as a tenant living in the house. So, with that being said, I fucking hurried up and bolted out of the house. I didn't have anything. I didn't have a fucking... I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. I was completely and utterly fucked. My dad left me stranded. He left me high and dry, and I did not know what to do from there. So I wandered the streets a while, and then I ended up asking, my brother if I could spend the night. And then I asked my buddy Jimmy if I could spend the night at his place. And I ended up sleeping in his car. And then for a while, I ended up homeless. I stayed with Joey for a little bit. And that was not a very fucking pleasant experience because we won't get into that. This story is about my dad, not my fucking brother. But anyways, I digress. So, things just got like really rough. And eventually Joey kicked me out. I got a job at Family Dollar, and I made a semi-decent little paycheck. But then Joey ended up forcing me to move him back in with my dad. And of course, I didn't want to live with him. And my dad treated me like shit, constantly making me stay at the house while him and my mom went out. And I was babysitting my brothers. Okay, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm playing Red Dead and a character just ran past me. So then a little bit of time goes by and my dad starts antagonizing me again about jobs, even though I literally was looking for jobs and I had fucking a fat ass stack of paper of places that I applied for. And well, he like I said, he was out for blood. He was out for blood and wanted him to fucking just continue a fight with me. So he pulled his bullshit again where he was going to call the cops. And again, I didn't know my rights, so I didn't know what to do. So anyways, I ended up leaving again. This time I didn't have a car to sleep in or any friends to go to, so I stayed on the streets for a while. And I ended up moving in with this family for a little bit, and it was hunky-dory at first, and then things got kind of weird, and so I ended up back on the streets for a while. And then when I got working at Dollar General, my dad welcomed me with open arms and everything, because he knew now he was getting paid. So then he was cool with me about it. But then my baby brother, this is about November 2009, my baby brother was on his deathbed because he was born with a bunch of medical issues. And my dad, the day that we found out that Wyatt was being taken off of his do not resuscitate order and let him have what's called the act of natural death, we were supposed to all go there and say goodbye to him. Well, my dad started flipping the fuck out and started yelling at my mom, and then it went from yelling to physical violence again. So I attacked him, and then he tried to pull his bullshit again, like, oh, I'm calling the cops. And this time I was like, go ahead. Like, I already at that point knew what to expect with the police. And I was like, go ahead, you can't legally evict me. Like, you gotta give me a 30-day notice. Also, what are you gonna do? Practice with me, stupid. Hey, police officers, I am coming down from a Percocet high, and I decided to put my hands on my wife, so my son started defending her. Please come arrest my son. And then, of course, he started talking shit, and then I talked my shit back, and then finally, it got physical again. We started hitting each other, and of course, I got the upper hand on him, and he was begging me not to beat his ass, and he's crying for my mom to grab me, and he's like, Teresa, he's hurting my leg. Because I think I already mentioned that my dad was in a dirt bike accident, and his leg was fucked up. But, yeah, so, like, I was just trying to, like, roughhouse with him just to have him leave my mom the fuck alone. But he refused to do that, and, you know, the scuffle got really intense, and he started hurting himself because he's a fucking idiot. And then as I was beating the dog shit out of him, he bit me on my bare chest. Well, I wasn't bare, but he bit me on the chest, and he tore a big fat chunk of my meat out of my skin. And it was pretty disgusting. So then I ended up calling the cops on him. He ran away like a fucking bitch, and the cops were like wanting me to press charges. And I should have honestly just pressed the charges, because he would have pressed charges on me if the fucking shoe was on the other foot. But I said no. And like I said, he was already gone at that point. Like, he already fucked off and was doing whatever the fuck. So, like I said, he fucked off. And then I was like, fine, I'm not going to fucking, I'm not going to press any charges or whatever. And I warned my mom, like, hey, listen, if he tries to fucking talk to me, I'm not going to call the cops. I'm just going to beat his ass. Like I said, I'll probably kill him. Well, anyways, things were calm for like over a year, and then like here and there we would butt heads, and he would threaten me with the cops, and I would just tell him, go ahead, call the cops. Tell them about the drugs you have in the house, you fucking dumbass. Go ahead and fucking tell them about the domestic violence history. What are they gonna do? Oh, officer, my son's got an attitude. Arrest him. Yeah, fuck you, Michael. Anyways, so then my mom gets sick with cancer, and he starts making her life a living hell. Thankfully, he didn't put his hands on her, but it was even worse. He was like verbally abusing her because, he was stressed out about shit, talking shit about her father. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I said this in the video, that my mom was a daddy's girl and loved her dad more than life itself. Obviously, not as much as, her children, but daddy came up very high up, and my dad hated that, so he was talking shit about her dad, and talking shit about whatever, saying he wanted to beat the fuck out of her. And I let this shit go for like 3 days straight, and then finally one day I snapped, and I started yelling at him, like, don't fucking yell at my mom, she's dying of cancer. And, eventually I got up in his face, and I start chest bumping him, and my dad's like yelling at my mom, Teresa, call the cops, call the cops. So fucking, I body slammed him on the couch, and then I felt the unmistakable fucking signs of my mom punching me in my goddamn head, and screaming for me to get off my dad. And I was like, what the fuck? So then that left me pissed off because my fucking mom is like hitting me and then like fucking yelling at me to get off of her or get off my dad. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? So then she called the cops. Cop showed up and was fucking, you know, a big dickhead to me. And, which I didn't understand that. And then for the next couple weeks, my dad made my life a living hell and was terrorizing me, fucking antagonizing me. And then when I'd get mad and, like, start to, like, get up in his face, he would go behind he'd go and hide behind his phone. I'm calling the cops. And it's like, dude, you are antagonizing me like a little bitch. And then when I confront you, you go behind and try to call the cops. And it's like funny because growing up, when I would threaten you with the cops, I was a pussy. But when I would threaten you with violence, you would call the cops. So by your logic, aren't you a pussy? Yeah. Well, anyways, it got to the point where I had to move out. And I had to get out of my fucking dad's house because I was going to kill him. Well, anyways, so my mom, I ended up moving in with my buddy Dan, and that didn't work out. And then I moved back in with Joey, and then I started living with, started living with Joey. Well, anyways, so then it got to a point where, so my mom dies, and, you know, I was hoping that my dad was going to change, and we all know that this is not where the story's going to go. My dad was not going to grow the fuck up. He was going to be the same fucking piece of shit that he's always been. Nothing was ever going to change this motherfucker's mind. So, it got to the point where, like, my dad called me one day and was, like, trying to ask me if my life has changed. And, you know, oh, did you lose your wife, your lover, your best friend? I'm like, dude, you lost a punching bag and a fuck buddy. You were a sexual fucking deviant. You did horrible things to my mom. When she wouldn't have sex with you or suck your dick, you'd fucking be violent, break her shit, or break whatever you could get your hands on. You fucking told her to get an abortion for Logan because she wouldn't talk to you. Because she wasn't in the mood to talk. And you terrorized this motherfucker for well over, like, close to 30 years. And you're upset now that she's gone and you want to tell everybody that you lost your fucking wife and your lover and your best friend. Dude, you lost a punching bag and a fuck buddy, okay? Also, weren't you fucking another woman right after mom died? We're not talking, like, years down the line. We're talking, like, less than a couple of months, you're already in another relationship, and you're fucking engaged. You piece of fucking shit. Well, anyways, I'm gonna try to wrap this up. This video's gone on too long. So, I cut him out for good. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you, I'm done. So we go for like 2 years without talking. So then he ends up getting diagnosed with bladder cancer, and I had to force myself to fucking talk to this piece of shit. And things, you know, we had a pretty smooth, like, 2 years, or we had a pretty smooth, 3 years. We had a smooth 3 years, and whatever, and we talked a lot about things. He did apologize about being a fucking cocksucker and whatever, but it's like, and then he died in November of 2016. And, you know, like, and I did forgive him for the most part, and I kind of do forgive him. But the damage is done. Like, here it is. It's been years, almost 10 years since he's been dead, and I still don't talk the best about him. Like I said, I could give you fucking stories upon stories upon stories about what kind of piece of shit my dad was. But, yeah, he was just, like I said, he was a tyrant. He was a sociopath. He disregarded other people's feelings. And I'm probably going to do an attachment video to this, most likely, if I already haven't. But anyways, yeah, so that is my video. This shit was almost 40 minutes long. So anyways, yeah, everybody have yourself a wonderful day.